How can you know if someone's a culture vulture? One of the biggest critiques of Drake is that he takes on sounds and makes boatloads of money on it, and that shows the vulturing of the culture. But one has to ask, with Drake having more streams this year than the Migos did for their entire career, is it vulturing or is it a love of the culture? Daniel Caesar recently said he hated when music became a job. And he said it actually made it hard for him to make music because at the end of the day, it was always just a place for him to open up, it was like a therapy. And I think that's what a lot of people feel about Drake. To somehow love making music and also make boatloads of money feels almost wrong because it's supposed to be one or the other. Once you start making money, you have to have been a sellout. If you're not making money, then you're just doing it for the love of the game. But to understand Drake truly, you have to understand Jacques. You see, Jacques had this mirror theory that from 6 months to 18 months, a child sees themselves as a whole entity through their parents' eyes, which means that Drake, looking at his Toronto-born Jewish mother and his Memphis-born musical father, found himself as a fractured entity while also seeing the wholeness. A lot of people forget that Drake's father was in his life for the first 5 years of his life, the time period where you were the most impressionable, and probably showed him ungodly amounts of music from everywhere because he was an actual trained musician, which would mean that Drake wouldn't just love Toronto or just love Memphis, he'd love it all. And that might just lead someone to not only embrace the art of music, but to embrace the art of the performance. The concept of literally stepping into any space and saying, okay, this is my space. How can I make Atlanta mine? How can I make Memphis mine? How can I make Texas mine? How can I make LA mine? You know what I mean? And this is why I believe that the future is going to look more like Drake and less like hip hop has in the past. When you think about what it meant to be raised in Atlanta or LA or New York, there's a sound, there's a look, there's a need to be a very specific thing to be embraced by the culture. But when people are cross-pollinated, raised, basically loving an entire breadth of music, you end up with the Uzis, you end up with the Cardis, where his concerts look more like a Juggalo concert than a hip-hop concert. You know what I mean? And I think this is super dope, but it would change the face of hip-hop. What do you think?